My name's Maike. I lost my dad to suicide when I was 21, and so that is why I talk. And finally, last year, I had the courage to write about my experience. I see talking as one of the greatest ways in which we can share our humanness. And by that, I mean our highs, but also our lows. And talking openly is one of the greatest tools we have at our disposal to help ourselves and to help others. Speaking from my own experience, when I was 21 and my dad took his own life, I really needed to talk. But no one seemed to have the words for my experience, not my fellow students, not my lecturers, and certainly not me. It was almost as if this situation was too personal for anyone to broach. And at the time, I was so confused and racked with shame and guilt that I just took people's silence to mean that this was unspeakable. So I just pushed all my emotions really deep down in my grief. So this traumatic event left me incredibly isolated, and I became obsessed as a coping strategy, I guess, with presenting what I hoped was an image of normal to the world. And I set myself incredibly high standards of perfection. And inevitably, this took lots of my energy and I started to struggle. So after a lot of therapy, which involved a lot of talking, also a lot of crying, but it involved a lot of talking, I eventually got to a point where I had a much better understanding of myself and my history, and I was able to move forward slightly. But it wasn't really until I started practicing yoga that I really was able to let go of my coping strategies and find a sense of peace. So now, many years on from that point, I run the local SOBS group, Survivors of Bereavement by Suicide. And the people who attend the SOBS meetings, myself included, we get so much from talking to other people who've experienced a similar type of bereavement. And of course, everyone's story is different, but by talking, we feel less alone, and we're not dealing with all the complex emotions that a bereavement by suicide brings on our own. And there is a sense that the shame, the guilt, the abandonment, that's a normal reaction to this experience. And I'll never forget how it was when I first met someone else who'd lost a parent to suicide. I was at a party. I had no expectation to be discussing any of this. And there I was in the middle of this kitchen, and I started talking to this complete stranger. And suddenly it came out that we both lost a parent, and it was, I don't know. It was the most remarkable experience. I suddenly felt less of a freak. I felt less alone. And it was incredibly healing. And so, having felt really isolated for many years, I now know that if we're able to voice our experiences, not, okay, in my case about a bereavement by suicide, but if we're able to voice whatever is going on internally and share it in a safe space, I really believe that we can support each other and hold each other up. As humans, by our very nature, we're social beings and we need to be in community. It's just a case of finding your community, finding your space. I now volunteer for the Luna Foundation as part of their lived experience network. So the Luna Foundation train people specifically to support children and young people who've lost a parent or a primary caregiver to suicide. And it's my hope that in the future, children and young people in my situation will have an outlet, somewhere safe to talk about their feelings. I think we can also easily become trapped in our own heads, overthinking and analysing, which can quickly feel really overwhelming, or certainly it can to me. And it's not until we start talking that we can see things from multiple perspectives and let go of unhelpful thoughts, enabling us to leave what can become the prison of our own mind. And I totally get that talking might feel really vulnerable at times, but ultimately, I think we're more at risk of harm if we suppress or hide these voices, and with them, our thoughts and feelings. So talking allows us to express our internal processes in the light of day, and they, rather than festering inside ourselves, we allow them out. And if we get a different perspective on it, just by voicing it, it's no longer so hidden, so trapped. And I do wonder if my dad had found somewhere safe that he was able to express his feelings, if things might have been different. So that's why I choose to talk all the time, too much. But yeah, can I just encourage everyone to keep talking, to find a space that's safe. And thank you for listening, because that's also important. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I think what you just talked about there in terms of the impact of bereavement and of loss on not just on yourself but other people around you, and building that network and having those conversations that can make us feel vulnerable, and why that actually helps in the end. I know that when you're in that moment of feeling vulnerable, it can be hard to see past what the next hour or the next 5 minutes brings. And so thank you for sharing. That was extremely powerful.